Support grows in Finland for the construction of partial border fencing along its frontier with Russia.
Over 1,000 Ukrainian towns and villages remain cut off from electricity after 10 days of Russian strikes that have targeted energy facilities across the country.
Climate concerns grow as hot temperatures are forecasted across Western Europe, with 30 degrees scheduled in southwest France later this week. Finland has moved a step closer to approving the construction of a fence along parts of its border with Russia. Prime Minister Sanna Marin says there is a growing cross-party support, which has gained traction since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Helsinki is concerned over a possible large-scale and illegal cross-border migration. Finland shares with Russia the longest border of any EU member and wants the main section of the proposed fence on its southeast, where most border traffic takes place.
We want to ensure that we have sufficient support for our border guard force to carry out effective and appropriate border control. In addition, we need to be prepared for any disruptive situations.
Between 130 and 260 kilometres of partial fencing is proposed along Finland's 1,300-kilometre border with Russia. Many Russians have fled their country due to Moscow's call for a partial mobilization of more troops. The cost is estimated to run into the hundreds of millions of euros, and construction would take place in the next 3 to 4 years.
No running water, no electricity, no basic services. The Kremlin's new strategy targeting energy infrastructure has plunged thousands of Ukrainians into darkness and the cold. The hardest hit are those living in devastated areas, like the recaptured eastern town of Kupiansk, which is still under attack and just 10 kilometres from the front line. A spokesperson for the state's emergency services says Russian shelling has left 1,162 settlements without power, including some areas in the occupied territories. Meanwhile, the Russian Defence Ministry has released footage of its tanks in Ukraine, launching strikes on frontline targets. Military spokesperson Igor Konashenkov says troops have made their first gains in the Kharkiv region since Moscow's troops were pushed back in a sweeping counter-offensive. In the southern port city of Mykolaiv, emergency services are searching for people buried in the rubble of an apartment block after it was hit by a missile on Tuesday morning. Back in the capital, residents are still reeling after explosive-laden suicide drones allegedly supplied by Iran struck several apartment blocks. Amid a mammoth clean-up operation, Ukraine's foreign minister has proposed that President Zelensky cut ties with Tehran for what it says is complicity in the crimes of Russian aggression. But Iran says it has not provided weapons to Moscow.
It looks like the height of summer. People relaxing, enjoying the sun, sea and sand. But this is not July or August. It's October in the southwest of France. Temperatures as high as 30 degrees are forecasted later this week. But even if the locals appreciate this warmer autumn, especially not having to put the heating on as usual, they are aware that something is not quite right. This man says it's not normal. At this time of year, we should already have frost. The birds are not flying. We don't understand what is going on. The planet is in danger. In Toulouse, some riverbanks along the Garonne have entire sections visible, when normally they are submerged by water. Jean-Michel Fabre, who studies the Garonne's development, says what is impressive about this year is we were able to walk on the river in July, August, September and now October. In the city of Bordeaux, the remarkable spell of hot weather, while enjoyable, is also growing concerns.
It's worrying, but at the same time, I don't think we should always relate everything to global warming. We saw it this summer with a lot of drought. That was really worrying. We'll see in the next few years. If it turns out to be this temperature on December the 25th one day, it will be really worrying.
An exceptionally warm plume of air blowing up from northwest Africa is said to be the reason for the heat, which is set to sweep across West Europe as far as the UK. In the midst of an energy crisis gripping France, this massive soybean harvester produces his crop under solar panels without difficulty. Agrivoltaics is on the rise. In the Haute-Saône region in northeastern France, an experiment is being conducted to see if solar energy can be generated without hindering large-scale cereal crops. 5,000 photovoltaic panels are being spread over this farm, and the crossover could be revolutionary for both the agricultural and solar panel industry.
The aim was to be able to meet France's needs in terms of renewable energy development, in this case in field crops as well as in livestock. The idea was to allow farmers to continue to produce while at the same time providing mobile and partial shade to protect crops from climatic stresses such as the very hot weather we had this summer.
According to TSE, one of the main producers of solar energy in France, the production of 2.5 megawatts peak, equivalent to the consumption of 1,350 inhabitants, is scheduled to be connected to the power grid in early December. They are able to follow the path of the sun, and the solar panels can also shift vertically to let rain pass. And horizontally, they can limit the damage of hail, or make the ground gain or lose a few degrees Celsius.
France is faced with a renewed and divisive debate over immigration, with politicians on the left and on the right trading accusations and fueling a discussion about who or what is responsible for the murder of a 12-year-old in Paris last week. The remains of Lola were found in a trunk outside the apartment block she lived with her family in the northeast of the French capital. The body bore marks of torture and rape. The main suspect in this case is a 24-year-old Algerian national who's in police custody and was under orders to leave the French territory after her residence permit had run out. The case is still under investigation, but the leader of the far-right, Marine Le Pen, has called the French government responsible for the incident because of its lax immigration policy. Members of the administration of Emmanuel Macron have labeled this political appropriation of a tragedy and have requested that both the public and the opposition allow time so that the police and investigators can do their job. A silent protest in tribute to Lola was scheduled for later today, but was cancelled at the request of the family. A march is still set to take place on Thursday. Annelise Borges is in Paris for Euronews.
American film director James Gray is in Lyon this week to receive a tribute from the Lumiere Festival, held where the Lumiere brothers invented modern cinema. Gray reflected on the format so far, being comparatively young compared with other art forms, as well as talking about his new film Armageddon Time, which premiered in Cannes this year.
It's sort of a mistake to think that an art form will exist forever, right? What cinema's story is, we don't know. It's such a young art form. Part of the problem is when the market becomes God and there's nothing as a counterweight. Corporations begin to consolidate their power. And like I said, it begins to train people in thinking about their own expectations. And unfortunately, the Hollywood system has done a fantastic job in enforcing its own kind of idea of what cinema is and should be on the rest of the world.
The United States stands for an idea whose time is now.
Ronald Reagan will win tonight.
What a schmuck.
Gray's Armageddon Time is a semi-autobiographical dive into the New York of the early 1980s. The story of a young teenager from a Jewish family in Queens who befriends a young black student who dreams of space, but for whom the social elevator will not go up.
Maybe the distance of the past allows us to see things more clearly today. History is like peeling away the layer of an onion. You know, you can never really get to the core of it. It's endless. And so I was trying not to say anybody is at fault. It's not about that. We all do our little thing to contribute to a collective catastrophe.
Armageddon Time is the 8th film by James Gray. From Little Odessa with Tim Roth, his first film, to Ad Astra with Brad Pitt, and 4 films that launched the career of Joaquin Phoenix. he has built a unique career in American cinema. Armageddon Time will be released in Europe this autumn.